Kim, thank you so much for joining us. We are very, very excited to be looking ahead for our HIMSS National Capital Area Chapter's June 11th event on fraud, waste, and abuse and the role that health IT has in such topic. Very, very excited to hear from you just from a perspective of what can attendees expect when they're joining us next week. And before I give an opportunity for introductions, the HIMSS NCA chapter very focused on the federal health IT mission, also very involved in student mentoring and some philanthropic work that we'll do with some local organizations in the DC metro area. So we are very, very excited to have you next week.
Well, I'm excited to be there. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. For some quick intros, myself and Alan are part of the HIMSS National Capital Area Board, and we are responsible for bringing in some great speakers for some upcoming program topics. So with that being said, Kim, we'd love to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, and then we can go from there.
Sure, great. Hi, everybody. I'm Kim Brandt. I am the Chief Operating Officer, Deputy Administrator, and Acting Director of the Center for Program Integrity at CMS. So running a few different hats these days. This is my third tour at CMS, but my main focus is on making sure that we manage our 1.76 billion, or trillion, actually, not billion, 1.76 trillion in program dollars efficiently and try and figure out how to most effectively utilize our almost 1,300 contracts that we have. So excited to be talking to you all.
Great.
And Kim,
Absolutely.
I'm excited about the other folks that are going to be in the room with you. I mean, you're sort of have this deep level of experience and familiarity with CMS, but Defense Health Agency is going to be there, maybe Veterans Health Administration, and two organizations that we usually don't have, but also play a role in fraud, waste, and abuse, HHS, Office of Inspector General, and Department of Justice civil fraud. Maybe you could talk a little bit about those less known to our usual audience organizations.
Sure. They are maybe less known to your audience and organizations, but very well known to me. HHS OIG is the investigative arm of the Department of Health and Human Services. They're the ones that I kind of refer to as the top cops for HHS. So they're when there is fraud or abuse happening at CMS, oftentimes they will be the ones who point it out to us through an audit or an evaluation to let us know that there's something happening at CMS that we need to be looking at programmatically. And I believe we're going to have someone from their Office of Investigations join us on the panel. That's who we work with to really investigate true issues of fraud. For instance, right now we have a bunch of sham hospices happening that are leading to billings that are funding all sorts of bad acts by foreign nationals. There was a press release that we'll want to talk about on that just came out a couple of weeks ago. Similarly, the Department of Justice, we're going to be joined by one of their top counsels. We work very closely with them because the Department of Justice are the lawyers for HHS, basically. They're the ones who, as the HHS OIG finds the fraudulent activity, the Department of Justice are the ones who decide if it truly is fraud and then decide whether to take civil or criminal action and then pursue and prosecute the bad guys. So we work very closely with them, surprisingly, on a lot of data analytics. Both OIG and HHS help us with data analytics that they run in different ways than we run them as the business owner. They run them looking for anomalies and things like that. And so we'll talk about that on the panel. And I think it's a great thing that we have as a partnership, but I think it'll be very interesting to your audience as well.
100% agree. Nick?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Kim, CMS has had incredible recent success with identifying and suspending potentially fraudulent payments, totaling over 130 million in recent suspensions through the establishment of the Fraud Detection Operations Center. As CMS looks to continue that trend, how do you think public and private health innovators can assure that they have relevant solutions, relevant ideas that are aligned to CMS's needs?
It's a great question. I said at an event I was at a week or so ago that I had met thus far with over, now it's been over 80 individual contractors or entities that have been coming in that all have great ideas. Some of them really innovative and helpful ideas for how we can address fraud, waste, and abuse. But it is virtually impossible for my team and I to meet with everyone. So I think part of what you can do is watch and see the types of things that we're putting on the CMS website. We have a fraud webpage that we are now starting to update, cms.gov/fraud, where you can go and find, recent successes, things like the fraud detection center results that you just mentioned, Nick, and really think about what it is that you have tool-wise or otherwise that could be helpful to us, and then send us an email and let us know, and then we will reach out. We're going to have opportunities over the summer where we're hopefully going to be able to let people show us what they've got in that regard. And so I think the best way for people to play is to kind of watch and see the types of things that we're announcing at CMS, and then let us know where your capabilities might be a good fit.
Absolutely.
I wonder though, drawing on your sort of the three views of CMS, especially your first one, where you were in charge of, there wasn't a center then, but under the Office of Financial Management, there was a program integrity group. How things, if you can reflect on how things have changed between since your first efforts there at CMS in program integrity, was that 20 years ago? You'll have to say when your response, and how things are changing now and will change in the future as technology has evolved.
Yeah, so actually, it really is amazing. I started in 2005 at CMS, so exactly 20 years ago, Alan. So good memory. I was right out of law school, came over from HHS OAG after a short tour there. And, the program integrity group at that point had zero data analytics. Data analytics was not something that people even thought about back then. Not to get too nerdy on it, but there were over 50 different contractors who were responsible for paying the Medicare claims in the various parts of the Medicare program. And as a result, each and every single one of those contractors had their own database. So there was no unified national data repository. There was no way, if you were looking for people billing for more than 24 hours in the day or looking for national trends, there was no way to do that. So one of the biggest things I'm most proud of from that first tour was creating what they call an integrated data repository and something called 1PI, which were the mechanisms by which we started to bring all of those disparate databases together and create one integrated data repository that is still now being used to run all of the data analytics. Take it to today, it's like night and day. I mean, if I would have even thought that the potential of what we can do today was there back in 2005, I probably would have been completely blown over, because back then, just getting to an integrated data repository seemed an almost insurmountable sort of goal, and it took us several years to get there. Now with agentic AI and all of the different bots and all the different things that we can do, we are able to find anomalies and look for trends and be able to use natural language processing to read medical records to be able to allow us to look in a much more fulsome way at the programs, and as a result, do a much better job of comprehensive program integrity. So it really has been, literally, it's not quite as big as having Optimus as a robot in your house, the Tesla robot, but it really is, we aren't quite there yet, but it is, I mean, the ability to use these techniques to really help us stop and prevent early on fraud and abuse, it's light years from where it was 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Kim, just to piggyback to something that Alan had earlier said regarding other agencies on the panel. So the June 11th event will have representation from HHS OIG, DHA, potentially VHA, DOJ, and of course CMS. Looking forward, right, new administration's goals, Dr. Oz's goals, future goals of CMS, how do you see the agency to agency, just public sector, agency to agency partnerships changing or evolving as the years go forward?
I'm hoping it becomes much more of a partnership. I mean, right now we all play pretty well together in the sandbox. Everybody has their own. I always say it's where you sit is where you see, so to speak. So everybody has their own unique perspective on this. But I hope as we move forward, particularly with better data analytics, better use of AI, better ability to detect anomalies and things like that early on, we can partner more effectively, particularly with HHS OAG and DOJ on these fraud cases and trying to figure out where the fraud trends are happening before they become so blown in a big way that we can't control them, or before too much money is left the program. But then also where it is that we see things happening, for instance, like at VA or other places where there might be, things that are popping there that could be analogous to what the CMS payers are experiencing. So that's where I'm hopeful. I'm hoping that we can get more to a partnership sort of thing where we each are able to look at it from our particular vantage point and really coordinate in a real time basis rather than having to do it almost too late down the road. Like now it's usually 6, 8, 9 months down the road. It's too late. We need to be able to do it more real time. And if we can get to that and have more of that real time, real coordination going on, that's going to be what's really going to help us from a program perspective.
I have another one, Kim. So back to the history lesson. Back in 2005, when you created the integrated data repository, uh, pr- the vast majority, I think, of Medicare beneficiaries were in the fee-for-service program. And,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
things have evolved in 20 years. There's in many ways. So as far as Medicare is concerned, you have well, I don't know, I think close to a 50-50 split between Medicare Advantage and traditional fee-for-service Medicare. There's Medicare Part D out there, which didn't exist back in 2005. And there's this whole marketplace that's going on. So are there different approaches that are taken for detecting fraud in the Medicare Advantage space, or the part Medicare Part D prescription drug space, or the marketplace? And then, as an add-on question, to what extent does CMS play with respect to detecting fraud against the state Medicaid programs?
Okay, that's a loaded
Lot in
question.
there, I know.
It's like you packed a lot in there, Alan. So the short answer is that CMS has a responsibility to look at fraud, waste, and abuse across all of those programs. I think, in particular, Medicare Advantage is interest to us. As of right now, this year, the latest data that I saw, which I hope is what's on the website, was 54% of Medicare beneficiaries were in Medicare Advantage. According to the Congressional Budget Office, they're projecting that it's going to be up to 64% by the year 2034. Keep in mind, right now, we're aging on 11,000 new beneficiaries a day until the end of 2029 when the baby boomers age out. So just, keep that in mind. At that point, we'll have almost 80 million people in the Medicare and Medicare Advantage programs. So it definitely means that if 64% of those, let's say, or maybe it's 60% in 2030 versus 2034, that means that we have to think differently, which is why last week we announced that we are going after managed care companies for risk adjustment data validation, or RADV audits, where they have potentially artificially inflated what it is that they're charging the program for in terms of the sickness of the beneficiary that they're
Mm.
submitting those claims for. And that impacts their overall spend that they get in terms of how much they're reimbursed. So that's something. We had not collected a single dollar since 2008 on that. So it is now time, 17 years later, for us to go big or go home, as you say, and start collecting on that. The plans have been expecting it. We just haven't acted on it. Similarly, looking at Part D, not as big of a focus because we haven't seen as much manipulation on the Part D side. That's the drug benefit, but that's where we are looking at it from a policy perspective, looking at Inflation Reduction Act pricing constraints and looking at how we can pull other levers to ensure that the spending is appropriate. We're definitely looking at the exchanges, in particular agent broker relationships and things like dual enrollment, where we see people enrolled in both a state Medicaid plan as well as in the federal exchange, or perhaps a federal exchange and a state-based exchange. So you'll be hearing more about that in the coming weeks as well. And then lastly, you asked about state Medicaid programs. We do partner very closely with them. There are what they call Medicaid fraud control units, the MFUCUs, who do a lot of that work within each state, but we do partner with the states to let them know when we're seeing anomalies and things there. I would say the biggest focuses for us, though, coming forward will be on the Medicare Advantage side.
Thank you.
That was a
Appreciate that
loaded
answer.
question. That was a lot.
Appreciate that answer very much. Kim, the last question I have for you is regarding the HIMSS NCA work with mentoring students. So the National Capital Area chapter is very focused on the federal health IT missions. Secondarily to that is a lot of the mentoring that we do with students that are local to the Northern Virginia or DC metropolitan area. Very curious to hear from you for students that may not be able to attend the June 11th event. What advice could you share now for them as they look to embark on future careers in health or health IT?
I think the biggest thing is find an area within health or health IT that you're super passionate about and become get really involved, become an expert in it. I know when I started, I had no desire and didn't even think that I was going to be a European Union tax law expert. That was my original intent in life. And here we are. Fate takes you in strange ways, but ask lots of questions, try and get lots of experience, find out what you like, find out what you're passionate about, and follow that passion. And know that CMS, hopefully, as soon as the hiring freeze is lifted, is always a great opportunity. Alan can certainly speak to this from his past, but it's a great place to come. If you're looking to learn about healthcare and health policy, at CMS, we are not only the world's largest health insurer, but we're also the largest health policy entity. So you can really have a chance to come and make a difference. But if not at CMS, go somewhere where you get a chance to really show your stuff and learn. Go somewhere where people will teach you and where you can learn so that you can take that and then eventually teach others. So that's my advice.
Absolutely. No, I very much so appreciate that answer as well. Kim, that's all the questions that we had for you. Again, I appreciate you taking some time to look ahead to the HIMSS NCA June 11th event on detecting, deterring, and responding to fraud, waste, and abuse across federal health programs. And like I said, we hope to see you all next Wednesday evening.
Next Wednesday, come at 5:30. Dinner is included with your reservation. And stay till 8 and see the entire program at the LMI Building in the Tysons Corner area of Northern Virginia.
Can't
Awesome.
wait.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.